Okay, click that button and click this button. Button. Who's the button? I do, bitch. Oh my gosh, you guys. I'm so tired today. I don't know why, but I'm so tired. So tired up in this bitch. Okay. I think I went live everywhere I said I was going to go live. Boom, boom, pow. Oh, hold on. On Patreon, I have auto mod on, which means you can't swear, which is dumb. We do not censor. At least not that. Okay. Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Deviant Witch Runs His Fucking Mouth. What are we talking about today, my friends? We're talking about Mercury Retrograde in Pisces for witches. For witches. Because why not? Why not? You are not being censored anymore. I took it off. I think. I pressed off. Oh, well. What do you do? So, bam, look at this. So cute. Hello, friend. Cute. Okay. Yes. That's what's going on. Let's take a breather, y'all. Mercury retrograde happens tomorrow. I mean, we're obviously feeling it right now because we were in the shadow. It's stationing. It's really close. So it's very intense at this moment. But it is stationing retrograde exactly tomorrow, February 25th, 2026 at 10:48 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And so, you can adjust your time zone because I'm not doing the math, y'all. Fuck that. Because that's a lot of braining. And you know what happened earlier? I passed out. Not like fainted or anything. I just I passed out. I just fell asleep. And then luckily I was just talking to Jade and I made myself look stupid because I didn't comprehend my brain. My brain wasn't working and I was like, what the fuck is this? It doesn't make sense to me. I typed it out and then my brain was like, and I'm like, oh wait, I'm the stupid one over here because it makes complete sense. It makes complete sense, right? Ugh, embarrassing. But if you can't embarrass yourself amongst friends, then oh well. So honestly, let's clear something up, okay? Because this is where I feel a lot of people in general, because it's a buzz thing, buzzword, buzz experience, buzz, bitch. Mercury retrograde, right? This is where a lot of us witches lose the plot before the conversation even starts. Buzzsaw. Okay. I love the way that saying buzz, how it feels, It's just very comforting. Anywho. And so Mercury, the thing I want to say is Mercury retrograde is not evil. Okay. Let's be honest. It's not evil. Mercury retrograde, um, we joke because we understand the sort of friction and the trickster sort of energy that Mercury, when retrograde, what it brings to the table. And so, yes, it's kind of funny, kind of comical. It doesn't feel that way always. It feels shit, right? It's not very fun. But it's also kind of fun at the same time, wasn't you? Right. And so we get caught up in saying things that are we kind of put into a faded stance, and it's not faded, right? So Mercury retrograde is not evil. It is not some sort of cosmic punishment. It is not the universe, the gods waking up and choosing violence just to knock your phone off the counter, scramble your text, and make your ex crawl out of the crypt and say, hey, baby, you want some? And then you're like, yeah, bitch, come on. No, don't do that. Can weird things happen though? For sure. Of course. Do communication issues, delays, crossed wires, forgotten details, and old unfinished business tend to show up? Fuck yeah. They do. They sure do. But I will say that does not make retrograde bad. It makes it revealing because who's saying go sleep with the flip? What the fuck? Sleep. Who's saying go sleep with the crypt keeper? Ain't nobody telling you to hook up with your exes, their exes. Like, ain't no one's telling you that. You said yes. Opportunity knocked, and you're like, okay, hold my hoops. Let's go. So you know what I mean? So it's like, okay, that is definitely our agency. We get to choose and we get to invest. Mercury retrograde sort of unearths for us, kicks up the dust, makes things a little easier, I guess you can say. Um, and so it's really entirely up to us to do something about it, right? To discern. Okay. Um, that's the thing. It's not innately bad. And that's the difference here. And it truly matters. It truly matters. We have been taught to treat retrogrades like curses instead of cycles. We have been trained to panic instead of paying attention. A lot of people hear Mercury retrograde and immediately go into superstitious mode. Superstitious. So superstitious. I don't know. That's just funny. Um, like all discernment has to leave the body, and now every inconvenience is astrology's fault, right? It's kind of like, it kind of is like when you stub your toe on something, like your big toe or your little toe, a toe, and just a toe. And then everything that can go wrong does go wrong after that because you're so mad and it hurts and you feel the sting, right? It's a lot like that, but it's like it's not that fault, right? It's just an experience you had, and now everything is turning to shit because of that one situation. But really, we could choose to reset ourselves. So, if we are serious about astrology, and especially if we are serious about our craft, then we really need a better relationship to these periods, these cycles. We need a more mature one. I don't know why I'm talking about maturity all of a sudden. Like, I've been talking about, being an adult and a sacred adult and what it means to be mature and grown. What the fuck? Like, what is going on? Why are we doing that? Gross. But it is. It's a conversation that needs to be had. We really need to have a more mature relationship with these sort of um, transformational cycles that we tend to only focus on the negative um, side effects, I guess. Retrogrades are not here to destroy you. They are here to slow the machinery down enough for you to hear what it has been trying to tell you to begin with. Really? You know? And in that way, retrogrades are not the enemy. They're a kind of teacher, an uncomfortable one sometimes for sure, yes, but a teacher all the same. They expose what has been rushed, what has been ignored, what has been miscommunicated, what has been buried under momentum. They unearth things. They bring the hidden seams to the surface. They show you where the signal has been distorted, where your timing is off, where you assumed instead of clarified, where you kept moving because stopping would have meant feeling. Ooh, okay. Yeah, gotta feel. Um, and this is not punishment. This is access. You hear me? Like, it's not punishment. Like, Mercury retrograde grants access to this energy in which we have the power to work with, to navigate, and yet we are so hung up on all of the bad it's going to do for us, right? We get caught up in that energy where we don't even allow for the beautiful chaos to unfold. And I did say beautiful chaos. So when we talk about Mercury retrograde in Pisces, I I don't want to give you another fear-based sort of like lecture a fear-based sermon, because we be preaching up in this bitch. But yeah, I don't want to give you another fear-based lecture on about broken technology and bad luck. I want to talk about what Mercury actually is, what Pisces actually is, and what happens when these two currents meet in retrograde motion, okay? And how us witches can work with this time in a way that makes us stronger, clearer, and more skillful. Because that is the whole point. That is the whole point of if you really think about the cosmic flow of things, that is the whole point of a retrograde. It's not to be bad or negative, it's life. Life happens. Life is all of these things. And we place judgment on what is ugly, what is negative, what is bad, what is blah, 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 but it is a life experience that it does not have to be sort of interpreted that way or just held in that way. I think that when we open ourselves up to seeing that there is another side to this coin, we gain more clarity because yeah, this is it's that's just the whole point of the retrograde sort of motion, and not just surviving the transit but learning from it. When we begin when we start with Mercury, most people stop at communication, right? Oh, bad communication. And yes, Mercury does rule our communication, but Mercury is much more than speech or text messages. Mercury is the way the mind moves. Mercury governs how we process, how we sort, how we connect one thing to another, how we interpret what we hear, how we translate inner experience into language and action. Mercury is thought in motion. Mercury is pattern recognition. Mercury, bitch, Mercury. I'm sorry, couldn't help myself. But Mercury is the route between question and meaning. But if we also think about it, Mercury is the messenger of the gods, right? And so if we think about that energy and the vehicle in which the energy is moving, we have our connection where what when we petition the gods, Mercury is there to what's the fucking word? Move that sort of that petition to them to relay that message, right? And so, like, if we think of retrograde motion, okay, Mercury is like, oh, all right, this is where I can get a little tricky, bitch. Like, do you really want this? Like, do you really want this? Let's talk about that. And so, like, we have to consider how we communicate with our gods, how we communicate with our spirits, how we communicate with our ancestors. Are we doing a good job at enunciating? Are we doing a good job at expressing exactly what we are going through and what we need? And so, like, it's not just miscommunication. It's how we utilize our communication. It's the travel of those messages, right? So when Mercury stations retrograde, it is not just that communication gets weird, but it do. It is that the systems we rely on to make sense of reality become less automatic and more visible. So it kind of puts us in a position where we have to be far more present, and we recognize how much of how do I put this? Oh my god. Uh how much we seem to be on autopilot for most of the time, right? And how that can get us into trouble. And so it is again the systems we rely on to make sense of reality become less automatic and more visible. So the gears start making noise, the skipped steps start to show up. The assumptions stop hiding. You see where you have been speaking from habit instead of truth. Does that make sense? And so, again, like, you see where, oh, I've missed some steps here. I have not connected these dots, or I haven't communicated this. And so, like, I've assumed so much. and people let me assume so much and they go with it, but like I've not been clear about what I really want or what I really need, and that's on me, right? And it's also on them for not holding me accountable, but did I allow them to hold me accountable? Right? Am I open for that accountability? So again, you see where you have been speaking from habit instead of truth, reacting instead of listening, interpreting through old wounds instead of present clarity. This is why retrogrades can feel frustrating. They interpret they they interrupt momentum. They force us to be present, to notice. They force us to notice. Yeah? They force us to notice. And from a witchcraft perspective, that is not a flaw. That, my friends, is useful. On the sort of mythological level, Mercury's, Hermes, I just love seeing Hermes, Hermes, I don't know. It's whatever you prefer. I don't know how to, I don't really know how to pronounce it accurately. But yeah, Mercury is not just a messenger in winged sandals delivering clean little packets of information, okay? Mercury is the one who moves between worlds, the guide, the translator, the trader. Trader as in like trade, not as in a trader to his own people, but like a trader, like we're gonna trade a tarot deck for I don't know, some food, like that. So yeah, the trader, the threshold crosser, the one who can travel between the divine and the human, the waking and the dreaming, the surface and the underworld. Mercury understands roads, but Mercury also understands crossings, not just paths, but transitions, not just statements, but meanings. Okay. So, this is one of the reasons Mercury matters so much to witches, because witchcraft also lives in threshold spaces. We work with crossroads, symbols, omens, layered language, timing, spirit communication, silence, implication, and what is said beneath um and what is said beneath what is said. Oh, we know better than most that a message is not always straightforward. Sometimes it arrives delayed. Sometimes it arrives broken open. Sometimes it arrives wearing a mask and only reveals itself after you have sat with it a while. Mercury teaches that interpretation is part of the work. So, archetypally, Mercury is a part of us that names, narrates, adapts, mediates, improvises, and learns. It has the curious mind, the clever mind, the connecting mind. In shadow, it can become scattered or slippery, anxious, too quick, too clever, or too reactive. In maturity, Mercury becomes a powerful ally in craft because it knows how to ask better questions, how to track patterns, how to listen for what is actually being said, and how to choose words that carry force without distortion. This is why Mercury is so important in magical practice. Mercury is there in the petition you write. Mercury is there in the prayer you speak, in the chants that you do, right? In the spells. Mercury is there in the wording of your intention, in the symbols you choose, in the way you record your signs, in the way you interpret divination, in the way you negotiate a boundary, in the messages you send, in the agreements you make, in the names you invoke, and in the way you study and transmit what you know. Mercury is not just communication in the casual sense. Mercury is magical literacy. And this also makes me think of like this is one of the reasons why I feel Mercury is so like we feel it more, we feel the effects of it more. Um it's a faster moving planet for sure, but like we embody it a little more because of how ingrained into society it is. Does that make sense? And so again, that is exactly why retrograde Mercury is not a dead zone for magic. It is not that Mercury disappears, it is that Mercury changes mode. Retrograde Mercury often does some of its best work through review, repair, retrieval, retrieval, I'm gonna emphasize that. You can take from it what you will, but retrieval, get it? Um, or maybe you don't, I don't know. Revision, reconsideration, and reconnection. It is excellent for revising and revisiting old journals, reworking petitions, correcting your records, returning to abandoned study, repairing misunderstandings, and reclaiming your own voice where fear or confusion has or had taken over. Then, let me get a little sip, you guys. But like, hopefully that's making sense. I want to paint the picture of Mercury so you understand, like, when it is in retrograde motion, some of the things that it may oversee. Okay, sorry, uh, I just had to get a drink of water, guys. Whew, all this talking. So then we come to Pisces because Mercury will be retrograde in the sign of Pisces. Okay, so Pisces deserves the same kind of depth that we've given, right? Because people flatten Pisces too. We really do. We do that to everything though that we come in contact with, honestly. Um, they call it dreamy and sensitive and leave it there as though that explains anything. Pisces is mutable water, okay? Pisces is mutable water. It is movement through feeling, symbol, permeability, permeabilities. Say that 5 times fast, bitch. Imagination and dissolution. Pisces is what happens when boundaries soften enough for something deeper to come through. It governs receptivity, compassion, ending, surrender, spiritual sensitivity, dream space, yes, and the imaginal field. Okay. It is the oceanic layer of experience where not everything arrives in neat categories. It's a little messy, these Pisces. Um, and that makes Pisces so beautiful. It also makes Pisces a little tricky because the same again, fishies, little fishies fishing, doing their fishy things in the water. Slippery. Because the same sign that can deepen intuition can also blur discernment if you are not anchored. There is a heaviness to Piscean energy that I think a lot of people negate or they try to not honor. And I feel like it's a disservice to Pisces people because I think people want to put this sort of like cheerful attitude towards Pisceans and only think of the good when it's like no, they feel things on a very deep level and it's very heavy and it can be very overwhelming and overstimulating, and we should respect that. We should respect that these Piscean energies have an extreme depth to them that rarely gets touched. Yeah. But yeah, so the same current that can bring profound spiritual insight can also amplify projection, fantasy, avoidance, escapism, martyrdom, and emotional flooding, as well as addiction. To again, I feel addiction is associated with this because of the sort of at times desire or need for escape. Yeah. Pisces is not bad for that. It is simply a sign that asks for maturity. Pisces asks you to open without becoming formless, to receive without dissolving, to feel deep without abandoning discernment. Discernment is a really big one for Piscean energies, I feel. For us witches, Pisces can be an extraordinary field for dream work, ancestor work, prayer, trance, divination, symbolic communication, emotional release, grief processing, devotional ritual, and spirit led creativity. The Piscean magic works best when it has container. Without container, the signal gets muddy. With container, the signal gets profound. So it needs parameters, it needs structure, it needs that guidance in place to hold it. Otherwise, it's just all over. you know? And so when Mercury retrogrades in Pisces, what we get is a fascinating and sometimes difficult combination. The messenger moves backward through the waters. Oh, it's like doing the backstroke. Hey, hey, girl. The mind enters the fog. The interpreter has to work in symbol and sensation, not just logic. That's a big one. Okay. It can feel like trying to sort letters underwater. The ink runs, the edges blur, the timing gets strange, the dreams get louder, the conversations become loaded. Old emotional material rises, unfinished stories come back around. Misunderstandings happen, yes, but often because something deeper was already unresolved and now can no longer stay hidden. Because the cosmic way of things, right? The cosmic way of things, the cosmic flow of things understands that where you are headed, okay, when Mercury stations direct and we start moving forward again, where you are going, where you are headed, this shit has to be resolved. This shit, there has decisions have to be made in that sense once Mercury stations direct again. Does that make sense? And so I will repeat myself, unfinished stories come back around, understandings happen for sure, but because something deeper was already unresolved and now can no longer stay hidden because where you are headed needs to be it needs to be navigated so you don't repeat it. Yeah. This is where people this is where people get the transit wrong, I feel. They think the retrograde caused the problem when often the retrograde exposed the problem. I feel like that's a huge that's something that really really needs to be understood is with astrology the planets, the transits, all of this stuff, it's not necessarily that they are causing these things, but because we are human, because we live on Earth, because of our connections, interconnections, and all of that, the cosmos are sort of reflecting like this is the perfect energy for this, and because that energy is being sort of activated, we here on Earth are being activated and our specific situations that we've been through are being flagged up. Yeah. And so it's not that the planets are saying you will fuck up in um on your math paper. It's more like, you fucked up on your math paper because, bitch, you did not study. You did not study, and you suck at math, and that's okay. And the planets are just saying, like, yeah, that's what we said. We were trying to warn you. You could have listened to us and be like, okay, let me study. But no, you just fucked up your math paper, bitch. And we tried to warn you, but you didn't read the signs. So it's a very interesting sort of connection. So it's like correlation, causation, causation, correlation. Like it's a blurred thing. It's not one or the other. They kind of it's a little bit of all of it, right? And then other like we don't know, unaware of. So yeah, I do feel this is where people get the transits wrong. They think that retrograde causes, the problems when often the retrograde is simply exposing the problem. This is what's really happening. That distinction can change everything for us. Mercury retrograde in Pisces may look like missed details, drifting focus, unclear wording, emotional assumptions, symbolic dreams, strange synchronicities, resurfacing grief, old creative ideas returning in fragments, or conversations that feel slippery because nobody is saying the thing underneath the thing here. But if you know how to work with this transit, you stop asking, how do I avoid all my problems? And you start asking, what is being revealed here? What is trying to be clarified? What am I being asked to revisit, reword, or release? And that is a witch's question because we like to do things. We like to make sure we can do something about it, you know? So that's where it is. And this is where sort of mitigation becomes powerful because mitigation is not about outsmarting astrology or the gods or trying to cancel a transit. It is about working with the weather intelligently. It is about reducing avoidable confusion and strengthening your relationship to the current that is active. So, in practical terms, Mercury retrograde in Pisces asks for slower responses and clearer language. It asks you to write things down instead of trusting memory. It asks you to double check dates, times, links, appointments, and agreements. Not because you should be afraid, but because precision is part of the sacred medicine here. It asks you to repeat back what you heard in important conversations. It asks you to ask better questions. And it asks you to separate what you know from what you feel. And what you feel from what you are assuming. Pisces can Pisces can blur those lines if you are not paying attention. It also asks you to watch your psychic environment. Too much noise right now. Too much scrolling, too much emotional input, too many people in your ear can muddy the signal. Mercury in Pisces needs quiet in order to hear well. This is not the time to flood yourself and then wonder why your discernment is cloudy. Build in some buffer time, build in some silence, build in time to simply pause. So, magically, mitigation can look like, and again, mitigation in this sense is like trying to lessen the intensity of, let's say, retrograde, right? Mercury retrograde. And so mitigation can look like cleansing for mental and energetic static, protection around communication, prayer before difficult conversation, being journaling with actual follow and revisiting old magical records to see what patterns you missed. It can look like a simple bowl of water on the altar with a candle and a petition for right speech and right understanding. If we understand what Mercury retrograde in Pisces is sort of challenging or activating for us, we can then start to do things to help us better navigate it, not to stop it from happening. We're not running away because we're not no weak ass punk ass witch. We're not. We are about this life, right? This is doing what we are. We're strong, bitch. We got our hoops thrown to the ground. We ready. And so, like, you take this, and you're not trying to run away from these problems, and you're not trying to just like run into it. You're trying to be as smart as you can. And so, knowing that this is might tackle my emotional and my psychic sort of communication, then we can do things that would mitigate those things. That makes sense. And so it can look like boundary work. And let me say that plainly: protection and boundaries are not paranoia; they are containment. And Pisces needs containment. Because of the intense Piscean energy, we can get so caught up in the emotion of something that we feed our delulus, right? Our delusions, and we need to not. We need to not feed those delulus, and we need to ground out so we can actually do something about it. So we do need that structure. One of the most meaningful ways to mitigate this transit, especially for us witches, is to move from fear into relationship by honoring Mercury directly. So instead of treating Mercury retrograde like a problem to survive, treat Mercury as an intelligence to approach with respect. Build build a sort of relationship, right? A rapport. Offer attention. Speak to the current. Okay, ask for right understanding, ask for clarity, discernment, and skilled speech. Planetary work changes when you stop acting like the planet is attacking you and start engaging it as a part of the living order you are moving within. This is actually where devotional practice can become incredibly grounding. This is something I really appreciate from my mentors in astrology as well as astrological magic. Um, is this is where, the Orphic hymn to Hermes or Mercury becomes not just aesthetically beautiful, but genuinely useful. The Orphic hymns are powerful because they do more than praise. They orient the mind, they place you in relationship, they train your speech and your attention, they pull you out of reactive panic and into sacred posture. And during Mercury retrograde in Pisces, that shift in posture can be half the medicine. You can use the Orphic hymn to Mercury as a daily devotional during the retrograde. When I was building a relationship with Mercury, I did it like every Wednesday on Mercury's day, and sometimes every Wednesday during Mercury's hour. You can play with that, but also, reach out and get to know, build that relationship. I'm not going to say like when you have a really good relationship with Mercury, everything's going to be easy. No, because I have a fairly decent relationship with Mercury, and I can say it's not always easy, but that's just life. It's not meant to be easy, but it's meant to be fun. It's meant to be like we can do things to help us out. And it doesn't mean that we're going to always get that access, right? So yeah, you can use the Orphic hymn to Hermes, Mercury as a daily devotional during the retrograde, especially before like divination, writing, important conversations, travel, teaching, or any kind of magical work involving communication and interpretation. Yes, light a candle, place water nearby if you want to honor the Piscean current. What's really cool is like you can maybe get a piece of paper and put like the Pisces symbol on it and write it on write it in marker that might like dissolve in the water, and then put that in your bowl of water, and that's very symbolic of what we're talking about here. Mercury retrograde, Piscean energy dissolving. So yeah, stuff like that. But yeah, place water nearby if you want to honor the Piscean current. Offer incense, coin, a bit of honey, a piece of bread, or simply your focused attention and clean speech. Speak your intention plainly. Ask Mercury to guide your mind, your tongue, your timing, and your interpretations. Recite the hymn, sit in silence, and write down what comes up. What comes up, right? And it doesn't have to be elaborate to be effective. What matters is consistency and sincerity. And because this retrograde is in Pisces, there is something especially aligned about using prayer, hymn, and ritualized speech as part of your navigation. Pisces responds to devotion, symbol, song, and sacred attention. Mercury responds to language, intention, and rightly ordered communication. The hymn becomes a bridge between the two. It gives your mind a container, gives your nervous system a sort of rhythm. It gives your magic a point of focus, and it reminds you that speech can be sacred, not just reactive. So, if you feel the fog rolling in during this retrograde, if communication gets slippery, if old emotions surface, if your dreams get loud, if timing starts acting strange, don't panic. And don't immediately assume the sky is punishing you. Honestly, like, stop assuming that. Stop assuming you're being punished. Okay? Slow down. Slow down. Calm thy tits. Um, listen more carefully. Clarify your words. Take notes. Revisit what is unfinished. Clean your field. Strengthen psychic hygiene, right? Psychic hygiene. Strengthen your boundaries. Honor Mercury. Work with the current, not against it. Not against it. Mercury retrograde. And so I feel like a lot of times people are working against it to not experience Mercury retrograde, but it's like, I understand why, because we're not given more information, more data. But like it's also ignorant for us to think that we can um, you know, scold Mercury, be like, no, you go in the timeout. Like that's not how it works. So Mercury retrograde in Pisces is not a curse, my friends. It is not the end of the world. It is a season of rereading, a season of listening beneath the obvious, a season where hidden meaning, unresolved feeling, and neglected truth can rise to the surface and be worked with consciously. And that, if we are honest, is exactly the kind of work a witch should know how to do. not just when the sky is clear and everything behaves, but when the signal distorts, when the weather turns, when the message comes in fragments, right? And when discernment has to be earned in real time. That is where the craft, our craft, deepens. That is where you become a better interpreter, a better communicator, a diviner, a better practitioner, a better witch, bitch. So that was my little bit on Mercury retrograde in Pisces. You know, not necessarily the same way that other people are talking about it, but that's okay because their information is necessary. I wanted to talk about it in a different way to hopefully paint the picture for you, so you can kind of get a feel for all of these separate things and maybe how they mingle, and then how what am I trying to say? How to navigate it. Your perspective. I did post and see if anyone had questions. One person did, so I'm going to answer their question right now. They basically were like, well, how does Mercury retrograde in Pisces affect Pisces rising? Okay, so before we close, I'm going to do the Q&A. Thank you for the question because there was just one question. So like, fuck the rest of you. Just kidding. Just kidding. Gosh, I'm just joking, guys. Um, so how does Mercury retrograde in Pisces rising? So, with that being said, Pisces rising, I use whole sign houses right now as I learn and navigate. I work with ancient Hellenistic astrology. So you're Pisces rising. That means Pisces is your first house, right? Pisces is your first house, and so that would mean that Mercury retrograde is activating first house. The first house is the only house in astrology where it specifically has to do with you, the witch, the person, right? That's your house, right? So, and this is a really good example. I do say so myself because again, it's like you're going to feel like very much so, like very much so in your physical life, right? Because it's your first house. Okay. And in ancient astrology, the first house is called the helm. I really love that image because the helm is how you steer the ship. It's how you orient yourself to life. It is not just personality in a shallow sense, it is your body, your presence, your appearance, your temperament, your identity, and the way you sort of move and navigate through the world as your authentic self, right? So if Mercury retrograde is happening in Pisces for the Pisces, rising, then Mercury is moving retrograde through, again, the first house of the helm. And so this is what will make that transit deeply personal. This is not just about oops, weird text or Mercury broke my schedule, computer issues. It can absolutely include communication issues for sure, but in the first house, it can also activate the way you are speaking yourself into the world. This can show up as a review of identity, a review of self-expression, a review of how you are being perceived. That makes sense because again, this is all about you, right? So when Mercury, the way we navigate and communicate and blah 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 blah, like we talked about, previous 30 minutes, and in Pisces, right? All of this is saying this has to do with you personally, and so a review of self-expression, a review of how you are being perceived, a review of how you introduce yourself, how you explain yourself, and how your words match who you are now and whether your current self narrative is still accurate. I really like this because it's helping you to sort of like redefine and reassert yourself for if this is activating your first house. It's like, oh, who am I? This is some big ass questions, right? Or this is a big ass question. Not some, oh my God, whatever, don't judge me. Mercury's retrograding, okay? Shit. I'm bound to fuck up. So, um, so with that being said, it's giving you the opportunity to really sit with that, and who am I right now? Who do I want to become? What's the missing link? What words of power? How do I communicate that? How do I effectively present that? And I want to tell you as well, like, you don't have to have solid thought yet on it, because again, you have this entire retrograde time process that. But when it stations direct is the minute you start, putting those thoughts into action, putting those ideas into action. Right now, it's just reviewing. So, because again, this is Mercury in Pisces, this may not come through in a neat, straightforward way. It may come through like feelings or dreams, confusion, projection, emotional reactions, subtle interactions, and moments where you realize, wait a minute, this is not what I meant, or this is not who I am anymore, or I've been speaking from an older version of myself. I've been speaking from an older version of myself. Highlight that. This is first house Mercury retrograde work. Okay. Not because you are broken, not because something is wrong with you, but because you're and again, I'd say that because it's going to be felt on a very personal level because it's activating that first house. Yes? Okay. So there's nothing wrong with you. But because your self-expression may be due for revision. So it makes what the fuck? It makes me think of the sort of metamorphosis that the butterfly goes through, the caterpillar goes through, and they turn into their, hot ass soup, and then they emerge as a butterfly. It's like, okay, you're in the hot ass soupy part of your your transition. And so you kind of have to think about what you want to be as you emerge new, when Mercury starts to station direct. Yes. And for Pisces rising people, especially, this can be potent because Pisces is already a sign that can be very permeable. Pisces risings often get projected onto. People can read into them, misunderstand, romanticize them, underestimate them, or just plain miss what is actually being said. So when Mercury retrogrades through the first, in Pisces, there can be a heightened need to slow down and clarify, to say, let me reword that. That's not what I meant. Or to say, actually, this is what's true for me now. I kind of wonder, this is just psychically picking up. I kind of wonder for this person if this is kind of you also taking the time to reposition yourself in your social status, like your friend groups or whatever. Like people are basing things off of an old version of yourself, and it's time for you to catch those people up. Like that is who you were, that is no longer who you are. Does that make sense? And so I think that's what's happening here as well with the sort of Mercury retrograde in Pisces activating the first house. Um, so yeah, and that's not a failure of communication; it's a mature communication. Yeah. This can also show up through the body because the first house is bodily, right? It is about the body. So if you are a Pisces rising, this transit may have you noticing that your body is reacting to things before your mind has fully even named them. Maybe you feel more sensitive. Maybe your nervous system is carrying more static. Maybe identity stress lands physically. Maybe you are rethinking your look, your presentation, your style, or the way you want to be seen. Again, none of that automatically means disaster. It may simply mean that the helm is speaking, and if you work with it consciously, this can actually be really a really powerful transit for Pisces rising first housers. Right, it can help you get clearer about who you are, how you communicate, what you are done performing, how to speak from a more honest and embodied place. So if you are a Pisces rising listening to this, your sort of sacred medicine during this retrograde is not to panic, it's to slow down, right? To slow down your self definition. Let your words catch up to your truth. So write it down, maybe journal your self narrative. Pay attention to dreams and emotional triggers. Watch projection dynamic. Protect your energy. Clarify instead of over explaining. And honor Mercury, especially if you are doing devotional work, because Mercury moving through your helm means this is a beautiful time to pray for skillful self expression, discernment, and right interpretation. So, yes, Mercury retrograde in Pisces can feel personal for those of you who have Pisces rising, Pisces ascendant, right? Because it is. Personal doesn't mean bad, though. It means quite meaningful. It means that this transit is not just happening around you, it is inviting you to refine the way that you steer your life. And that, honestly, is powerful first house work. All right. So that's just an example of how we can sort of navigate like Mercury retrograde in Pisces when it activates our specific house. So that first house question is like that's how it's going to activate your first house potentials, right? So keep that in mind. And in closing, I just want to read. I'm not going to like chant it or sing it because the bitch don't sing. I am not a singer. No, unless you want to pay me. But even that, if I get paid good, I probably will sing. But like, no. But we're gonna close with a little sort of honoring of Mercury. Yeah. Okay. Are you ready? I gotta keep it light and funny, guys. Mercury. Mercury, keeper of roads, language, and meaning. Guide me through what is unclear without letting me fall into panic. Help me hear what is true, revise what is distorted, and speak with precision, humility, and skill. As the waters move, let my mind remain teachable and my discernment remain sharp. Bitch, we got that. Okay. So thank you so much, everyone, for showing up. I do appreciate you. I hope that you can take something from this, utilize it, make it yours. This will be uploaded on Patreon. This will be uploaded to YouTube. So if you need to watch a recording, you will have access to it. Thank you again. I appreciate you, and I will talk to you. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Okay, bye. Like, click X here, click X there. Stop, 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 guys.